My daughter slid a chipped plate toward me and said, "You will eat last." 3 months later, I slid a deed across a different table and whispered the same words back, but by then, she was crying into my shoulder and begging me not to leave. I am 66 years old. I answer to Grandma more often than to Vera these days, though my granddaughter Sasha is the only one who says it with pure sunlight in her voice. I live in a quiet street with lilac bushes that always need trimming, in a house that remembers my late husband's laughter in the pipes. I have never been put together like the magazine women. No floating silk scarves, no sharp heels, just cardigans patched in the elbows, hands that remember recipes and fences that need mending. I am also the sort of woman who tells the truth even when it severs something important. This is my blessing. And my curse. A year ago, my daughter Lena stood in my doorway with a new ring flashing like sirens and said she had news. The man behind her leaned on the porch rail, 2 fingers balanced around a cigarette he never lit, a smile that was all smirk and no warmth. Trent. He had not finished community college, but he finished every bottle he opened and started every plan he never meant to keep. I had met him twice before, once at a barbecue where he brought nothing but took the leftovers, and another time in my kitchen while I washed dishes and watched him tug Lena's wallet from her coat as a joke. He was always full of those. "We're getting married," Lena said, waving her hand like a little girl making a wish. "June. We'll have the ceremony in the park, simple, a band from Trent's friends' friends. I don't want speeches. Just love. Real love." I set down the dish towel. I tried to fold my words into something that would land softly. "I love you. I want you safe." He does not know how to hold safe things. Her eyes sharpened. "You don't even know him." "I know how people move around spoons," I said. "Honest men put them back where they found them." She laughed with her lips, but not her eyes. "So that's a no? Another decree from Mount Vera." I shook my head. "You can marry anyone you want. But if you're asking me to be part of a day that ties fire to paper, my answer is no." She left. She did not slam the door. That was almost worse. Trent married my daughter in a white dress that fitted like a promise and a suit he did not return on time, rising late the morning after to complain about the coffee. I did not attend. I sat on my porch the day of the wedding with my best china on the table, poured tea for myself, and tried not to imagine my husband's voice saying, kindly but firmly, "Vera, you warned her because you love her, not because you want to be right." It took 6 months to collapse. 6 months for Lena to stop pretending, 6 months to hide bruises on her pride if not her skin, 6 months to watch the way Trent ate through money like it had wronged him. He did not hit her. He did not have to. A person can empty another person with neglect, shame, and the 1,000 small thefts of an ordinary day. Alone just until Friday. A car that never received its oil change because he had a gig. Next week will be different. It never was. When she called me crying in December, I pressed my palm over the phone and let the silence steady me. "Come home," I said. "Bring whatever matters and leave the rest. I'll pick you up." She did not come home. She went to a rental a friend of his had cheap, the sort of place where the bathtub leans toward the drain like it's trying to wear someone else's weight. She filed for divorce 2 weeks later. And then she blamed me. Her first real invitation after the paperwork wasn't an invitation in any sense that mattered. She texted me, "Dinner. 7. Don't be late." It was early spring and the lilacs were thinking about blooming. I crossed the city with a covered dish, chicken baked with lemon and rosemary, because no matter how a mother is treated, her hands remember. Lena opened the door and a breeze of canned tomato sauce and cigarette smoke swept over us both. 4 people were at the table. Lena at the head, Sasha with a tablet propped against a napkin holder, her thumbs quiet over the screen in the tense way of children who have learned not to take up space. And 2 friends I didn't know, their laughter too loud, the kind you use like insect spray. I recognized their type from 100 holiday tables, friends who like you best if you're falling apart. "Mom," Lena said, not hugging me. "You can put that there." I set the dish down. "Shall I serve?" She smiled, the tight smile I used to give her piano teacher when he missed the point. "Yes, but you will eat last." It was too neat to have been accidental. In our house when Lena was a child, we sometimes said, joking, "Moms eat last," when a pie piece went uneven or a roast came out lean. In my mouth the phrase meant sacrifice. In hers now it meant punishment. This was the last phrase in our conversation that night. She wouldn't look at me when I walked around the table. Control vibrated off her like heat off pavement. She wanted me to know, the woman who warned me will now wait till everyone else has what they want, even if none of it is good. I served Sasha first. For a second our fingers brushed, and she pressed my knuckle with a secret courage. "Thanks, Grandma," she whispered. "You're welcome, sunshine," I said, quietly enough to be harmless. The friends ate like winners. They praised the sauce while explaining loudly that my generation did not understand how hard it was now. Lena stabbed her food and did not eat much. When I finally sat to reach for the smallest piece left, she stood up. "We have a thing," she said. "Mom, thanks for dinner. You can leave the dish." She meant the casserole dish. She met my body in her doorway, too. I walked to the bus stop without crying. Not because it didn't hurt, because I was conserving water. There are deserts in a daughter's life that a mother's tears cannot irrigate. After that night, she did not speak to me for 3 months. Silence grew in the cracks of our family like weeds. I still texted Sasha on Fridays, a photo of a robin or a cake or my cat sleeping like an elegant napkin. I did not comment on Lena's posts. Instead, I kept a ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, I wrote a letter to my daughter. I did not send them. I kept them in a shoebox in the pantry between the flour and the jars of cherries. I addressed each envelope to a different memory, to Lena at 7 with a fever and the lemon socks, to Lena at 13 with the microbiology kit, to Lena at 20 with her heart broken by a good boy she didn't want. I wrote things like, "You do not have to forgive me, but please do not learn to love people who confirm your worst fears about yourself. You deserve someone who wants your first slice of pie, not your last." It was Sasha who broke the drought. "Grandma," she said on a call I did not expect one Tuesday morning, "my class has a project where we interview an elder about a hard decision." She lowered her voice as if someone might overhear, though she was in the school library surrounded by plastic ficus plants that looked like they were eavesdropping anyway. Would you talk to me? The teacher said we can record it. A hard decision. I swallowed the stone in my throat. "Of course, baby. Come after school. I'll make cocoa." She came alone, which I learned later had cost Lena a precious argument. The interview was simple and devastating. 2 girls in our kitchen, the 11-year-old with the steady pen and the 66-year-old with the hands that shook a little when she remembered. I told Sasha about the decision to say no to the white dress. I told her about how love sometimes requires disapproval, not because you enjoy punishing someone, but because you want to spare them a bigger punishment later. I told her about her grandfather, how he said no to a promotion in another city because it would have taken him away from bedtime stories. "Sometimes love is a refusal," I said, and realized I was crying only when Sasha passed me a tissue, practical and gentle. She kissed my cheek before she left and whispered, "Thank you for not eating last." The first thaw between my daughter and me was not a conversation. It was a bag of groceries. The next day, a boy from the shop on Oak Street knocked on my door carrying a crate, milk, eggs, oranges, brown rice, spinach, and a note tucked under the bread. A receipt was stapled to the back, paid in cash. The note said, "For the cocoa." Maybe Sasha had told her we ran out of milk. Maybe she remembered that I never buy oranges for myself because they feel extravagant. I stared at those bright skins in my kitchen light and did something I would have mocked a month before. I took a picture of them and I texted it to my daughter along with a heart. She didn't reply. Still, the thaw continued in cautious inches. When Sasha won second place in the science fair with a model of a water purifying system built from straws and charcoal, I texted congratulations and got a thumbs up back, which is the international currency of not starting a war when your hands are shaking. When Lena changed her hair and posted it to the world, I typed and deleted 6 versions of "I like it" and finally wrote, "Good cut. The curls look strong." She hearted that. I sat very still on the couch, as if a bird had landed on my shoulder and might fly off if I moved too fast. Then we had our first real conversation in half a year. It began with a leak. My ceiling, she said on the phone, the first 3 words brittle with caution. Do you know any plumbers who answer after 9? I know one who answers me, I said. I fed him biscuits when he came to fix the water heater 2 winters ago. I will text him. Is Sasha with you? She's asleep. Trent didn't fix anything, did you know that? The bitterness broke out of her carefully measured voice like a nail through soft wood. He would put a cup under the drip and call it a day. I didn't know, I said. From cups. She inhaled like she was about to say something sharp, then exhaled. Sorry, she said. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said you will eat last. That was cruel. I was trying to hurt you for not saving me from something I chose. I pressed my thumb to the seam of the table, feeling the groove my husband's ring left one summer while he was sanding. Thank you for saying that. Long quiet. Pipelines creak in the night in a house this old. Mine was thinking. Hers too. I still think you could have handled the wedding differently, she said finally. I know, I said. I could have stood there and smiled like a person who believes that stepping off the roof will teach you to fly. But I didn't want to be standing at the sidewalk looking up. She laughed once, not kindly but not cruelly, and said, "Send me the plumber, please." The plumber came, muttered nice things about my biscuits, and patched the pipe. That should have been the end of the evening, and a neatly balanced one at that. But when I checked my phone before bed, there was a message from a number I did not recognize. It was Trent. He had that way of texting that felt like gum stuck to a shoe. Hey, tell her to stop. She's making me look bad to my landlord. Then, because I didn't respond immediately, another, she owes me half the deposit, Vera. I know my rights. I stared at the screen. The gall of lazy men is its own energy source. I blocked the number. I did not tell Lena that night. A road is easier to travel if you don't put a log in the way before morning. I did tell her when the blackmail started. 2 weeks later, she appeared at my door shaking. Sasha was at a sleepover. Lena had walked here in the rain with no umbrella, her hair frizzed into something that resembled a fight. She had a paper in her hand. It was one of those thin envelopes that always carry something heavy. An unpaid credit card in her name. The balance was almost laughable if it wasn't a trap. $3,000 for electronics she had never owned. I closed this account when I moved, she said, smacking the paper onto the table like a fly. I have the email. But apparently someone reopened it with my old address. She looked at me then, like she finally wanted me to answer a question I had not been allowed to answer. Do you think? Yes, I said. I think he did. I called the number on the bill, she said helplessly. They said they can't do anything without a police report, and You're going to file one, I said. And we're going to collect our own evidence tonight. It felt good to say that word. Lena sobbed once, and then the sob turned into a laugh she couldn't control. You're ridiculous, she said, wiping snot with the back of her hand. You're going to wear a cape next? Grandma detective. I packed one in 1989, I said. It's at the dry cleaner. We drove to her old building. I made her wait in the car while I walked up to the mailboxes with a basket of muffins like a woman visiting a neighbor for coffee. I placed 3 muffins in the common area, took a polite bite of a 4th, and then, while 2 men argued about soccer in the hall, I peeled back a piece of tape holding the flimsy locker list and wrote down 2 names with apartment numbers that matched the pattern on the credit card, delivery confirmation. One was Trent's. One was a friend of his I had met once, the kind of man who calls women females. We spent the next 3 days building a file that would make a prosecutor smile, a timeline, 3 witnesses, 2 screen captures from a public Instagram where Trent thanked the homies for the upgrade, and, thanks to the plumber who did indeed answer me when I call, an audio recording of Trent at the building gate bragging to a neighbor about how she owes me anyway. All of it legal. All of it boring. The way justice often is. At the police station, the officer behind the glass looked happy to see a story organized into folders. We'll handle it, he said. Do you want us to talk to him tonight? Lena shook and nodded. I put my hand on the back of her neck like I used to when she had fevers. The call came at midnight. Trent had been arrested. It wasn't grand, just a small charge with a big future if he kept up the hobby. He was out in the morning. But the bill was frozen and, better, a restraining order was granted. I thought that would be our turning point. It was for a few months. A friendship began like seedlings in eggshells. We texted memes about bad coffee and worse men. We exchanged recipes again. I went to Sasha's spring play, and Lena sat down beside me like a person who knew how to lean without collapsing the person she leaned on. "You were right," she said one night after dinner when the girl had gone to bed and the dishes were stacked like medals in the drying rack. "Not just about him. About me too." I picked a storm and called it a sea. I took her face in my hands and kissed her forehead. "You are a ship. You forgot it for a while." Summer arrived. The lilacs exploded and the neighborhood kids turned the street into a chalk museum. I made lemonade. Lena came by on Thursdays to help trim the bushes, and we used that to pretend we weren't really rebuilding anything complicated. We were just working with clippers and a green bin, laughing when our hands got stained. And then, it's hardly fair how stories do this. Everything collapsed again. Not because of him. Because of me. There is a letter I never meant for my daughter to read. It was in the shoebox in the pantry between the flour and jars of cherries, in an envelope addressed to the day before your wedding. I wrote it months before the park ceremony, on a Tuesday when the sky looked like tin and my chest felt like it was holding a small animal that needed out. The letter said that if she went through with it, I would not come, and why, and how it felt to watch my child choose a person who did not see her. It said more. It said I had gone to Trent 2 weeks before the wedding with my hands empty and my mouth full of good intentions. I asked him to let her go. I told him I would pay the non-refundable deposits in exchange for his pride intact. I told him it could be his idea. I told him, in a voice that shook, that I would pretend it had never happened. He laughed like a child breaking a toy and said he would marry her because I didn't want him to. Because then he would always have something to hold over her. Because some men court power like it's a girl. I wrote all of this in the letter and then scolded myself for writing it, because there are things a daughter should not have to carry into marriage even if the marriage is a mistake. I put it in the shoebox because I put everything I cannot throw away into boxes. I meant to burn it later. I didn't. On a Sunday in August, Sasha came over to make cherry jam. That girl has a sweetness that makes everything taste like childhood. She was in the pantry on a stool that should not bear a child's weight. She was reaching for the sugar and the shoebox slid, as shoeboxes will if you've stacked your life too high. The letters spilled like birds. She gathered them with the reverence of someone touching old photographs. That should have been the end of it. But her mother came to pick her up early. Sasha, oh Sasha, whose moral compass points straight to true north, showed her the top envelope because she had long ago decided that secrets make mold if you store them in your kitchen. Lena stood in my doorway holding that envelope like a court order. "You tried to bribe him," she said. There was a red spot high on each cheek like heat rash. "You went to him. Behind my back. You were so eager to be right you tried to buy my life." I started to say no the way we all start truth-telling with a stumble. Then I stopped. "Yes," I said. The word fell between us like a heavy tool. "I did. Do you have any idea what it's like," she said, every syllable a nail, "to realize your mother thought so little of you she thought money could change your mind?" "I didn't think money could change your mind. I thought it could change his." "It didn't occur to you to talk to me like a human being, not like a stubborn donkey you had to steer with carrots?" "It occurred to me every day," I said. "You had announced your choice, and you were building a life around it with such speed that my words sounded like traffic noise." She put the envelope down like she was setting a pot on a stove she no longer trusted. "I can't do this," she said. "You saved me from a mess, and I will be grateful until that gratitude corrodes me. But you also tried to control my life, and I will never forgive you for that." Then she said the sentence that split me along an old fault. "You will eat last till you learn." There it was again. The knife of the joke we used to make when pies were small. She found the spot where love had scarred and she pressed a thumb to it. She took Sasha's hand. They left. I stood a long time at the sink, running water over cherries without seeing the red. At twilight, I carried the shoebox to the backyard and lit a match. My letters curled, folded themselves into ash. Somewhere between the second and third envelope, a wind pushed smoke into my face and I coughed with a fury I cannot describe. Not anger. Just the body's objection to losing what it was not ready to lose. The next weeks were a hallway with no doors. I wrote no letters. The phone stopped being a place where hope might arrive and went back to being a device for weather alerts. I put a new latch on the pantry. I made soup and poured it into Tupperware and ate it standing up. I mowed the lawn in a pattern my husband used to call a drunk's haircut. I slept. Or I didn't. Nights were measured in the ways pain can impersonate sleep, numb, restless, the long false dreams in which my mother scolded me for not being gentler with my child. Meanwhile, thunderheads were building on a horizon I was not watching. Trent had moved from petty recklessness to serious fraud. He had a gift for sniffing out soft corners in a system, and the pandemic years had left many. He had opened a small consulting firm, offering help with unemployment claims for a fee. People paid. He filed applications with name changes and ghost addresses. An audit began. Men in shirts who had seen too much paperwork asked questions in a tone that meant they already knew the answers. A list of names was attached to a folder. Halfway down was my daughter's name, with a signature that looked like a child's imitation of adulthood. I found out by accident. The plumber's sister works at the county office. The city is a village if you live in it long enough. She cornered me at the grocery store by the apples. "Vera," she said, "is your Lena in trouble?" It is a terrible sentence to hear when you are choosing fruit. She told me what she could and what she shouldn't have. She slid the name of the investigator across the produce scale on a scrap of paper like we were conducting an illicit romance. I had a choice again. To step back, because my stepping forward had burned the bridge so thoroughly the ash still floated in my kitchen, or to walk into the storm again. We mothers keep our walking shoes by the door. I called the investigator and said my name slowly, like I was spelling out a password. "I think my daughter's name is on a file where it doesn't belong." She did not file those papers. I can prove at least one timestamp puts her in a classroom helping with a school event. How would I prove it? I didn't know yet. But mothers are archivists. I had 4 years of school newsletters, 1,000 photos with metadata living quietly on a cloud, an email from a principal with "thank you" and a date. He agreed to meet. "Bring what you have," he said. "Don't bring the daughter if she doesn't know you're doing this." My chest tightened. He was not a cruel man. He was a man used to stepping on landmines with a clipboard. I built another folder. It took 3 days and the good scissors. Sasha's science fair photo, Lena holding a model of a filtration system while her daughter held the ribbon. The date was a jewel. The timestamp was a crown. A receipt indeed for cookies for Ms. Bangla's class at 11:08 a.m. on a day when the claim had allegedly been updated from a coffee shop across town at 11:03. I printed screenshots of text messages from Trent. I did not delete those. God knows why, including one where he wrote, "You'll never prove it." I printed the restraining order. I printed a photo of the mailboxes at the old building with the flimsy tape curling at the corners like a simile. I plotted a diagram of the distance from Lena's apartment to the coffee shop and back within 5 minutes, annotating it with the reality of traffic. I am a grandmother who knows how long it takes to get across town at lunch. That should count for something. It did. The investigator called me a week later and told me the file had shifted. He sounded like a man trying not to sound like a man with good news. They had pulled security footage. A man with Trent's walk, you cannot fake how a person moves through a door, had used a card with Lena's name to access Wi-Fi at the coffee shop. The manager remembered his laugh. The charges against my daughter were dropped before they even formed. A new file opened with Trent's name bold. I did not tell Lena for 2 days, which is to say, for longer than is decent. I wish I could say it was strategy. It was cowardice. I was afraid to deliver good news and have it turned back at the door. I was afraid she would say, "I did not ask you to save me." The old fight between maternal instinct and adult child autonomy made everything taste like aluminum. On the 3rd day, I went to the park where mothers gather whether or not their mothers speak to them. She was on a bench with a book she wasn't reading. We looked at the ducks for a while because it is hard to fight when a duck is preening like a prince. "I might have done something," I said to the pond. She didn't look at me. "More jam? Burn another shoebox." "I talked to a man from the county about the fraudulent claims," I said. "They're not going to touch you. He knows. He found him." I brought photos. Lena closed her eyes. I braced for impact. Even when I don't want you, she said finally, opening her eyes with a tired tenderness, you come like weather. Thank you. Anger and gratitude can share a body, I said. I am learning this late. She nodded. Her mouth quivered. Me too. We ate ice cream from the truck with a care that would have made therapists proud. Two women with history, tasting something that melted too fast, trying not to waste it. She took my hand. We did not solve anything. But there was a hand in mine. It was enough for that day. There is a second collapse in this kind of story that does not get told much, because it makes everyone look small, the collapse of pride. The county filed charges. There was a preliminary hearing. Trent came in with a suit he'd bought for graduations. He had a new girl who looked frightened around the edges. The judge was a woman with hair that did not move and a patience that had been run over by a bus. I was there. So was Lena. So was Sasha, because she wanted to see justice as something you could hold with your eyes. Trent's lawyer tried a last trick. He produced an affidavit from someone who had known me for years, an acquaintance from church named Paula, who doesn't like that I organized the bake sale with a spreadsheet. The affidavit claimed I had a vendetta, that I had persecuted Trent because he was poor. That I was part of a class war. I felt my temperature rise in the chilly courtroom. Lena looked at me, horror widening her eyes. She was trying to calculate how many of these affidavits lived under our pews. I stood when it was my turn and told the judge how I came to know to call the county. How I built the folder. The judge asked me if I had attempted to mediate privately before bringing the file to the county. No, I said. I tried to mediate before the wedding. It did not take. Laughter bubbled in the rows. The judge raised her hand and the courtroom quieted all at once. Then, because God likes a flourish, the judge asked if there were any remaining exhibits. Our lawyer, public, kind, efficient, looked at me. I nodded. There was one. I slid a paper across the table. A deed. The house with the lilacs on our quiet street. I had retitled it the week before, while waiting to learn whether my child would need a place that could not be taken from her by a restless man or a restless court. I had named Lena as co-owner with rights of survivorship. It was a legal phrase that felt like poetry. If something happens to me, the house is hers without the wolves of probate or ex-husbands sniffing around the mailbox. The judge asked me why I was showing her a deed in a criminal matter. Our lawyer said, because, Your Honor, the defense is attempting to depict Ms. Vera as a vindictive woman who seeks to punish the defendant by making the survivor miserable. Evidence to the contrary seems relevant to intent. The judge nodded once, like a woman tasting a soup and finding it adequately salted. Noted. Lena was crying. Small, horrified tears as if she had broken something valuable and I had presented her with one in its place. I did not touch her. I wanted to, but I had learned something in the last year that had cost me blisters on the inside of my heart. Sometimes the hand you hold out will be rejected if it carries even 1 ounce of triumph. I kept my hands folded. Trent was convicted of the more boring counts. There were fines and conditions. His suit looked more expensive under fluorescent lights than it had under the sun. He did not look at us. The new girl did, once, with that alert animal gaze women get when they are half in, half out of a story like this. I wanted to go to her. I didn't. You cannot save every person with your hands. You will drown. On the courthouse steps, it felt like someone had lifted a car off my chest. The little group that was us in this storm, me, Lena, our excellent public lawyer, Sasha with her camera still slung around her neck because she is a child of this century, stood in sunlight that looked like a promise. A reporter asked if we had a comment. We did not. We went to a diner with cracked red booths instead. If the story ended here, it would be neat the way stories are neat when they do not belong to anyone you love. But the story didn't end. It did something better. It repeated a phrase and turned it into a blessing. At dinner 2 nights later, I cooked for 6. I invited our plumber and his sister from the county office because if you are going to be held together by ordinary people who show up, you should feed them. I invited our public lawyer who said she couldn't come and then came anyway. I invited my neighbor who mows my lawn when he is bored. I invited Sasha's best friend because girls need to see their families smile in front of people who knew them when they were crying. And I invited my daughter, who came late, breathless, as if she were running to catch a train she had missed too many times. We ate too much roast chicken, golden at the bone, corn salad with basil like confetti, biscuits so soft the knife forgave them everything. Everyone talked at once. And then, when only one piece of chicken remained and the oldest rule in our house, a mother eats last, raised its head and wagged its tail, Lena stood up. She lifted the plate. She walked to me. "For months I wanted to teach you something," she said, her voice a careful instrument in a quiet room. "I wanted to teach you humility by making you go second in your own life. I wanted you to feel small because I felt small. But tonight, if there is any teaching left between us, I want it to be this." She set the plate down in front of me. She looked at the table, at the people who had become a parade of helpers, and then back at me with eyes that had learned a different language. "In my house," she said, and I heard it land not just in our kitchen, but in her future kitchen, the one in the house with the lilacs that would one day be hers without a fight, "you will never eat last." I did not cry because I was already a flood. I did not make a speech because speeches ruin food. I broke a biscuit in half, buttered it till it shone, and handed her the bigger half. "Together," I said. That could have been the end. But there is an epilogue, as there always is in families, full of chores. On Sunday, Lena and I walked to the park with trash bags and picked up wrappers. We talked without hiding how things had been. I apologized for the bribe in the letter without defending it. She apologized for "you will eat last" without pretending it came out of nowhere. We wrote down the numbers of a therapy practice on a flyer. We made appointments, the kind you keep even when you'd rather cut your own hair with kitchen scissors. We drew up a small document at the kitchen table, not a contract, not enforceable except by love, which said, "When in doubt, ask before acting." Do not use surprise as a weapon. Do not weaponize help. If you need space, say, "I need space," not "get out." If you need support, say, "Please help me," not "you should have known." Share the first slice of pie. If we must eat anything last, let it be anger. Let it be shame. Let it be the old sentences that keep us from saying new ones. We signed it. Sasha made us a copy with stickers. The cat walked across it and left paw prints that the lawyer in me, there is always a small lawyer in every mother, found suspiciously adorable. One more scene, because you deserve it if you have walked with me this far. 2 weeks after the court, we hosted a neighborhood potluck. Long folding tables on the lawn. Kids with popsicles turning sidewalks into maps. My neighbor brought coleslaw because he always does, and someone brought a casserole that was 80% cheese, which is a love language. At dusk, strings of old lights flickered into illumination because my husband teaches the house to shine even now. As people lined up with their plates, Sasha jumped onto our little garden wall and called out, "House rules. Elders eat first. Children too. Everyone else gets a plate next. No one eats last." She grinned at me, gap-toothed, because childhood is a lesson in loss that doesn't break you. Lena stood at my side with a serving spoon in one hand and a steady life forming in the other. "Mom," she said, leaning into a shoulder that had grown strong from carrying and from putting down what wasn't mine, "did you mean it? The deed?" "Yes," I said. "One day this place will be yours, your laughter, your lilacs, your careful hands on a stubborn lawnmower. I cannot keep you safe from everything. But I can hand you a table that will never be taken from you." She kissed my cheek. It was a quick kiss, the kind grown daughters give in public between refilling the lemonade and the next story, but it felt like church. "Then eat," she said. "And when you're done, sit. I'll do the dishes. You have earned first rest." "I'll dry," I said, because the old joke must keep telling itself in better ways. But we shared the last towel. The night folded itself around our little street. We told stories about the time my husband fell into the hedge and how we pretended we didn't see from the living room window. We admired the new baby whose mother looked like a storm had passed over and left her wet but standing. We sent home leftovers in thrifted containers because thrift is another kind of love. We stacked chairs. We rinsed. We forgot to fight. We went to bed. People like to make the story of reconciliation a one-time event, a swell of music and then credits. The truth is, it is a dish you wash every night, the one whose pattern has been worn by 100 forks. You can't outsource it. You can't microwave it. You can only wash it together, Get better at passing the towel. Admit when you missed a spot and rinse again. My daughter said, you will eat last once. And then the world taught both of us something the hard way and the good way. Now we say other things. We say together. We say, thank you. We say, I am learning. We say, I'm sorry. We say, it's okay to save me if you ask first. And on Tuesday nights, when the soup is excellent and the bread is still warm, Sasha grins at us over the butter dish and says, first we eat. Then we love. Then we do the dishes. I plan to eat first while I can. I plan to love until the dishes gleam. I plan to give my daughter the chair at the head of the table and sit beside her instead, so that no one in this house ever again is fed last.
So another story of my grandmother has ended. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.